Hello and welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. In this episode, recorded on September 21st, 2015, Daniel and I spoke with Mr. Scott Horton about the Iranian nuclear and sanctions relief deal. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on the Iranian nuclear program and the Iran deal. Mr. Horton is the host of the Scott Horton Show, which mostly focuses on topics related to foreign policy. You can follow his work and listen to his show at scotthorton.org. That's SCOTT Horton.org. For more information, please see the show notes page for this episode at wakeupcallpodcast.com/Iran-deal-2.
Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our interview with Scott Horton. This portion of the interview is going to focus mainly on the deal itself. So let's start off by going on what are the main points of the deal? What are the big talking points? Okay. And then we're going to split off and go into objections that we're hearing from big pundits. And we're going to see what you say to debunk them.
Okay. All right. Now, some of this I already covered a little bit when I was describing kind of just the form of their nuclear program, what they have. I got into a little bit of what is new in the deal. Again, all of their facilities are already safeguarded. All their nuclear facilities are already safeguarded. But inspections are now being expanded to even the mines where they get the uranium out of the ground, to the facilities where they make the centrifuges, even though there's no nuclear material there. And beyond that, then, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but also the Iranians have agreed to inspections at undeclared facilities, or so-called suspicious sites, where the Iranians deny there's anything nuclear going on, but the Americans or others claim they have their suspicions. So that's the expanded inspections. And they're now going to have, at their actual nuclear facilities, they're going to have IAEA inspectors there on site 24/7, round-the-clock monitoring, not just, coming back every once in a while and making sure and counting with the accounting, but they're going to have, and actually I'm not sure if there's going to be people there 24 hours a day, but certainly there are going to be expanded cameras and seals and expanded inspections under the additional protocol and the subsidiary arrangements far beyond what it was before. And then they are also, as I mentioned, scaling back their program that they do have. So the Fordo facility will no longer have nuclear material in any of the centrifuges there. The Natanz facility, they're going from 20,000 centrifuges down to 5,000, and they're going to eliminate their stockpile of enriched uranium, which again is still only enriched to 3.67% industrial grade, electricity grade, but they're going to convert all that to fuel rods and use it up as fast as they can, and any extra that they have lying around beyond their immediate needs, they'll oxidize. So it'll be no one will even be able to pretend that it's available to be further enriched to possibly make a nuclear weapon. And then I guess the Bushehr facility was already converted, and it's the Iraq facility was really what's at question now. And they're going to make sure it's a light water reactor, and so the Bushehr and the Iraq reactor both will not be able, not just that they will not be able to produce plutonium-239 as a waste product, which is where nuclear weapon states get their plutonium, from the waste in reactors. And the plutonium that it does put out will be so polluted with other isotopes, it's basically useless. And they don't have a reprocessing facility anyway. And of course, there's absolutely no ability for the Iranians to build a nuclear reprocessing facility for that kind of waste without the whole world knowing anyway. When they do remove the waste from the facility, again, that's going to be under complete safeguards and inspections with no way for them to cheat. So you don't hear much about this part of the deal at all, really, because not much scandal is here. We're taking a safeguarded civilian nuclear program and we're making it even more safeguarded. Mostly, well, we'll get to the criticisms in a minute, but when people say, oh, boo-hoo, 24-day inspections and this and that, they're not talking about at their nuclear facilities, which are under permanent inspection. They're talking about at so-called suspicious sites like Parchin. And so Parchin is not a nuclear facility. Parchin is a military base, and it is a weapons facility. It's a huge military base and has, I guess, research and development of different kinds of weapons and whatever going on there. But again, there are accusations that I already mentioned are debunked that they have this nuclear test chamber. So, or that they once did, or something like that. And so, what the deal says is they have, at a non-nuclear facility now, they have the right to inspect, but with 24 hours notice. And if, according to the deal, if the Iranians attempt to drag their heels in all the worst ways, the whole way, they could possibly drag out entry to 24 days. Although at that point, they're already so far in violation of the spirit of the deal that they would be putting the entire UN Security Council back on America and Israel's side in being obstructionists. They wouldn't just be breaking their deal with us or pushing their deal with us. They'd be pushing their deal that they made with the Russians and the French and everybody else too. And really, I mean, come on. And you know what? I hate the Ayatollah. Nothing that I say here is an apology for the Iranian regime, only for the truth here, all right? And the truth is there's no reason to believe that these guys have gone through all of this so that then they can try to drag their feet when it comes to Barchin, when it comes to where we already know that the accusations are completely bogus and don't even stand up on the face of them, never mind on, actual inspection of the place. Just inspection of the accusations is enough to destroy them. But anyway, so it's not going to be a problem anyway, that 24-day deal. And if they ever had been doing any research with any nuclear material in there, 24 days, or as Joseph Butt, the nuclear physicist, put it in a piece that he wrote, I think, for The Hill, whether it's 24 days or 24 years, you're not going to be able to cover up the presence of uranium there. And we're talking about radiation from the tiniest of particles can be detected by IAEA scientists and this kind of thing. So it is basically just nonsense. So you have a reduced civilian program. You have inspections expanded to the furthest reaches of their program, like the centrifuge facilities in the mines that previously weren't inspected and safeguarded. And now they're even going to be allowing inspection at places where there's no proof that there's nuclear material at all, only inspections. And in exchange for that, the U.S., the EU, and the UN are lifting the sanctions against Iran, the crippling sanctions that have been levied against their economy. And you may or may not have heard about this, but it has been a crisis for the importation of medicine and foodstuffs, and just the economy as a whole is suffering, and so people are less able to afford these kinds of things. But it also got to the point where no international shipping concern, or fewer, many fewer international shipping concerns were willing to do any kind of business trading with the Iranians because, hey, who wants to tangle with the U.S. Treasury, man? Not me. So as CEO of this company, I vote that we just ignore Iran altogether until this blows over. And that decision was made in boardrooms all over the world. That just, we can't afford to mess with these people. We don't, and there's the sanctions against their central bank and all that make it very difficult to do these international transactions. So what that meant in practice was people are dying of easily treatable diseases. Hemophiliacs dying because they can't get surgery for other things because they can't get the medicine to clot their blood. Cancer patients dying because they can't get their medicine for their, for chemotherapy and this kind of thing. And again, like Hazlitt would emphasize the unseen. We don't know exactly what all Iranian society has suffered from this because we don't know what would have been there instead. But it's certainly hundreds of billions of dollars worth of deprivation, which translates directly to human misery among innocent civilians. Collateral damage if you're a government employee, but human beings to the rest of us. And so, I just heard a libertarian the other night, or an ostensible libertarian, I guess, just throwing up his hands in disgust and saying, well, I don't even get it. We don't get anything from this. What do we get from this? What do we get out of this deal? Well, they weren't doing anything to us in the first place for them to stop doing to us if you really need something. But when it comes to who is actually making the concessions here, it's Iran that is making all of the concessions. The only concession we're making is to cease our economic war against them. Well, boo-hoo. It's their money anyway. They're not getting American welfare. It's their money that America has frozen in foreign bank accounts that now they're going to get refunded. And now we're going to stop a blockade against them. Well, I guess call me an isolationist. I'm for ending the blockade.
All right. So now you covered some objections then in that answer, of course, but we'll get into a few more here. One of the ones that comes up a lot, and especially with these Republican presidential candidates, you always hear Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and all these people talking about this, is these, I guess there are 4 of them, these 4 American hostages that are being held by Iran that weren't a part of this deal. And I know Jason Ditz a while back at news.antiwar.com had an article on the Iranians being held by the U.S. for violating the sanctions. So can you talk about why this shouldn't be an objection, that these hostages and the prisoner exchange wasn't included in the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious on the face of it that it's simply a poison pill. If the guys who claim that they care so much, these hawks that you mentioned, Ted Cruz and them, they care so much, they're against this deal because it doesn't include their release. If what they really cared about was their release, then they would be happy for this deal, because this is kicking in the door on America's relationship, breaking open. Terrible with the metaphors tonight, boys, but this is the first big step to cooling off all the tension between the United States and Iran. So before, there was no negotiation to be had about these guys. Now that we've got the big, gigantic fake issue of the Iran nuclear program out of the way, we ought to be able to make much better progress on other issues like this. And by the way, those guys aren't just kidnapped hostages. I mean, one of those guys, there's a whole gigantic piece, I think it was in the New York Times or the Washington Post, about how he was a non-official cover CIA agent over there, spying and was, doing nefarious deals and got grabbed by the Iranians in Bahrain. So these are not just, the hikers who got nabbed because they accidentally strayed to the wrong side of the line, which I know one of those guys, the hikers, and they've been released a long time ago. And I don't know. Now, one of the guys is a Washington Post reporter who I presume is just a reporter and is falsely accused of being a spy. The Iranians are accusing him of being a spy, and maybe they have reason to, but I presume he's innocent, and I don't give any benefit of the doubt to them in that. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean, even if they're false charges, that he's simply being held as a hostage rather than he's being held on false charges, which can mean other things too, like cops suck in Iran too, or whatever it is. And I'm not familiar with all 4 cases. I'm not an expert on all 4 cases, but if people want to come and just hang whatever extra little things, I'm sure we could spend the rest of the interview coming up with other things that are not in the deal. But why any of those things should be reasons why we should just not have a deal at all, I think even the fact that they're that desperate to try that goes to show that they don't have any good arguments. And they certainly don't have an argument for, okay, well, if not this deal, what then? They say better deal, better deal. Well, what they mean by that, they're quoting their leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, of course. And by better deal, he means no nuclear program whatsoever. Well, that's just a lie, okay? That's not even something that is unobtainable that Netanyahu wants anyway. That's Netanyahu and all of his many, many parroting puppets just being simply dishonest. What they're saying is they don't want a deal. They want a war. They know good and damned well that the Iranian government is never going to abolish their entire nuclear program. And they also know good and well that an American bombing campaign of a year in length is not enough to get rid of their nuclear program either. Maybe if you sent in the entire American Army and Marine Corps to occupy Persia, you could abolish their nuclear program for a while. But how long do you think an occupation like that is going to last in a nation that has 3 or 4 times the population of Iraq, is 3 times the size of Iraq, is all mountains, not flat desert, unlike Iraq, and has not been in a permanent state of war and blockade and sanctions and bombing for the last 25 years like Iraq has. And so, what's their alternative to this deal? They dare not say, because you would absolutely just veto it and would never listen to another word out of their mouths again. So instead they say, oh, better deal. We want a better deal. Yeah, well, whatever. Instead, what they're getting is a safeguarded civilian program is to be more safeguarded than ever before, and that'll be good enough for them.
So that is actually one thing, though, that I have heard from better deal people, though, even libertarians, is since the nuclear weapons issue is kind of a non-issue, why not have a deal that actually addresses things that are more of issues like these hostages and like Hamas
so
in the deal?
Send John Kerry over there. Why does it have to be part of this deal? They're lying. Look, they're lying. Some libertarian who says that is either a liar or he's too stupid to breathe. That's a poison pill. That's called a poison pill. Hey, I know. Let's add a bunch of crap to the deal so that it can't get passed. Okay, good. That's brilliant. Consider me fooled. We can have 100 agreements. By all means, let's send the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State over there right now to kiss the Ayatollah's ass and beg for the 4 guys back. I don't care. What does that have to do with the nuclear deal? Nothing.
All right. So one of the objections that's come up, I guess, within the last month or so, and I know Tariq Ralph, I think it was, debunked it on your show, but can you talk about this report of self-inspections and the side agreement between Iran and the IAEA that somehow had some special nefarious provisions in it?
Yeah, no, it's a total lie. Again, I mentioned this guy before in the first segment here, George Jahn, Jahn, and for years and years, I mean, if you just search, if you go site:/antiwar.com and then John, you'll find dozens, scores and scores of articles by Jason Ditz just completely thrashing this idiot and the ridiculous lies that he's used, frankly, mostly by Israeli intelligence to put in the Associated Press. And it's completely stupid crap. Like, look, everyone, a graph with a sine wave on it that I claim means the Iranians are doing nuclear weapons research. And then you call a nuclear physicist and he says, no. It's not. That's stupid. That's not anything. That's not, that's light years from anything accurate representing any nuclear weapons research of any kind whatsoever. Try again, George. And then he tries again and again and again and again. And it's just always crap. And again, I beg you, search antiwar.com for the name Jahn and you will just, cry laughing probably. In this case, he said that he saw the document that proved that Iran is going to bring the IAEA swabs and say, okay, we inspected it for you. Here's the evidence. Go and test it. Now, doesn't that sound like an obvious and stupid lie to you? Yes, of course it is. No inspection in the history of the IAEA has ever worked that way. Oh, but now we're supposed to believe on the most controversial nuclear inspections regime in the history of the galaxy. Now the IAEA, who on any other day the Hawks will cite as saying, oh, they're not satisfied about this, that, or the other thing. Now the IAEA is a cat's paw of Iran. And the IAEA has built in a giant loophole where the Iranians get to inspect themselves and provide the samples to the IAEA. Okay, that doesn't make any sense because it's not true, of course. And the truth is that what's going to happen, and later, Louis Charbonneau and another writer at Reuters came out and corrected George Jahn and put him in his place. They got the actual document. And of course, what's going to happen is the Iranians are going to have the swab in their hand. They're going to take the sample and they're going to put it in the Ziploc baggie that is held by the IAEA inspector, who is also holding a video camera in his hand. And the whole process will be completely documented, and where every time they get a sample that the IAEA gets, the Iranians get another sample from the same location that they put in their bag as their controlled experiment and whatever. It's just like you would expect a bunch of nuclear technocrats to agree to, of course. Like they're going to build in a secret scandal to the actual implementation of the inspection. It's the most half-baked, ridiculous thing. But again, it doesn't matter whether any of these allegations are ever true. What matters is the quantity of them. It never stops. So there are people in your audience who this is the first time they've ever heard anyone say that any of this stuff is not true, right? Everyone knows that Iran nuclear weapons for the last 25 years of my life. I've heard that. And unless people stop themselves and say, well, wait a minute, how come they don't have any bombs yet if they've been making them for 25 years? Golly, if they don't stop and think about it themselves, they'll just be inundated and just be made to believe that everyone knows, because the consensus is, because there's just, where there's smoke, there's fire. But that's not smoke. It's hot air.
So one thing we all know is that politicians love false dichotomies. And one that I hear a lot, which I guess isn't a dichotomy anymore since the deal has officially kind of been passed. It's a done deal. But I've heard Barack Obama say a lot of things like there's only two options, the deal or war.
Yeah, don't you hate that guy? No, Barack Obama, he's the worst. Listen, that's just a lie. I mean, in a sense, it's sort of kind of true, because what he's saying is the people who are trying to kill the deal, they want a war. But no, he is accepting, and this is extremely dangerous. He is accepting all the premises of the war party. And he's saying, but I'm the one who's saving you from that fate by this negotiation, which is a huge bluff. Pardon me. It's a huge bluff. And luckily it worked this time. But again, the status quo, and maybe if the deal had failed, hypothetically, if the Senate had been able to kill the deal and override the veto, that kind of thing. Maybe, I guess, the future is the future, so we don't know exactly what would have happened. But assuming that they would have reverted to the status quo, we're still talking about a safeguarded nuclear program under the IAEA, under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and under the inspections regime of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and still no need for a war. Again, the Mossad agrees with their presumed to be the more hawkish of the two, and Mossad agrees with the CIA that that the Iranians have not made the decision to begin pursuing nuclear weapons. They do not have a nuclear weapons program. They have not been making nuclear weapons. They have not been working on nuclear weapons. And again, the worst accusations that they ever were still agree that they halted back in 2003. So the status quo is a safeguarded civilian nuclear program. Nothing to panic about. But Obama has used this to basically bludgeon his votes in line in the Congress in order to get it passed. And it was a gamble that worked out. But, it also, he's conceded huge talking points to the other side in this case. So that's, it's the kind of thing that can come back to hurt us later, where, even Obama, the author of the deal, admitted that, if not for the deal, we'd all be dead by now or whatever. I'm sure we're going to hear that coming from these guys in the future. And so, here's something you never heard a Democrat say. Oh, come on. This whole thing is a bunch of crap. The Israelis have been lying about it since 95, pretending they're concerned when everybody knows they're not making nukes, but now we're just putting a big fake issue to bed, okay? They can't say that. That's my job. They can't say that. That's the truth. That's not what Democrats do. They got to try to get their thing done, but they're not going to be wholly honest about it. Ron Paul said before, because Ron, he actually knows what he's talking about on this stuff. He's not just good ideologically. He's extremely well informed on all of these issues. And he said, if he was president, he would just tell them, I'd prefer it if you'd stay within the NPT, please. It would, save us all a lot of grief. But whatever. Sanctions lifted, live your life. Let's trade. And I promise not to start a war against you. There's your security guarantee. And no treaty, just an end of hostilities, in their kind of half forms that we've dealt them all these years, the sanctions and the threats and the covert action, et cetera.
Okay, so even if this is a false dichotomy, how likely are we to see a war? We know during the Bush administration, as Seymour Hersh has reported, that there were some proposals to have a false flag where they were going to dress up Navy SEALs as Iranians and shoot at them. And we still hear Ash Carter and other people now talking about how this deal doesn't prevent the U.S. from attacking Iran. So how likely are we to see a war, whether it's started by the U.S. or Israel or someone else?
Well, on the last point there, not that I'm apologizing for this, but I want to put that comment in context when they say the deal doesn't prevent us from having a war. There's no security guarantee in the deal, just factually speaking, as far as what the deal is. It's just sanctions relief on this end. But in context, what's happening there is he's defending the deal from hawks who are saying, oh, no, now you've taken the military option off the table, and now they're going to nuke us in our jammies, and we're all going to die. And he's reassuring them and saying, oh, no, we can still bomb them if it comes down to it. They start breaking the deal, sanctions snap back into place, etc. But if that's not good enough, I've got B-52s, so don't you cry. So that's, I'm not saying that that's okay or whatever, but it's Ash Carter trying to mollify the crybabies who are, imagine that the Iranian boogeyman is going to sneak out a nuclear weapon and smuggle it into their town somehow, that kind of thing. And then, I'm sorry, what was the first part?
I just pointed out that during the Bush administration, they talked about
the chance of a false flag. Yeah, now, I think the greatest danger there would be, if Jeb comes in, we have Republicans, and they bring the neoconservatives back into power. We're playing a whole new ballgame then. Right now, the worst chance of that would be a false flag by the Israelis, but I'm pretty sure that they're not going to do it because, well, I'm not the expert on this, but I believe that they need, I forget if they need a majority, or I think they even need a unanimous vote of 8 in the Israeli war cabinet to start a war. And there's no way in hell that he's going to get his entire cabinet to agree to that when the Americans have their deal like this, that he's going to start a war. Netanyahu's going to start a war. They're going to let him, and to drag us into it, that kind of thing. It's just it's the wrong moment. Now, if Cheney had followed through with that plan that you mentioned, that Cy Hirsch reported back in 2007, that just might have worked. And right around that same time, Cheney sent David Wamser, the original author of the clean break policy and everything, to AEI and I think one other think tank in order to tell the people. Cheney wanted this leaked, that he's sick and tired of George Bush's fecklessness, and he doesn't trust in his willingness to do the right thing and bomb Iran. And so he is now, fully insubordinate, and is trying to negotiate with the Israelis that the Israelis will start a war in the Persian Gulf and will get the Iranians, basically give the Iranians no choice but to respond against American, Saudi, and allied targets in Bahrain, etc., in their war against Israel in order to force George Bush's hand into that war. And by the way, I know that sounds like it's crazy stuff, but it was originally the story was originally broken by Stephen Clemens at the Washington Note, who is known as a not controversial center-left Barack Obama-loving think tanker. He made his own little council on foreign relations. He's such a centrist, and he's good on the neocons. He is good on the neocons, but that doesn't make him a radical. He's really not. He's a very trustworthy guy to tell a story like this from his sources. But then it was verified by the New York Times and the Washington Post. Verified, because it was huge when this came out in 2007. And the Washington Post went and verified it and verified that it was David Wamser who was the one telling the tale. So, you think that stuff like that can't happen in America. This is no banana Republican stuff like that. Well, and in fact, it didn't happen. But Cheney apparently was very seriously considering working with, if he couldn't get compliant special forces officers to, basically commit treason against their president and their country on behalf of a foreign power to get us into a war, then he was going to just go ahead and negotiate with the Israelis and have them do it. And Bush, I guess, I don't know if it was, Bush and Rice found out about this and put the kibosh on it, or if, for whatever reason, Cheney backed down. But there is a danger that I wouldn't say there's much of one in the Obama years because, Obama actually sent Admiral Mullen. You can find Ray McGovern was so impressed by this. He's written about it numerous times, where Obama sent Admiral Mullen to say to the Israelis and to admit to the press that he said to the Israelis, we are not going to have any USS Liberty incidents here. Do I make myself clear? I mean, holy crap. That is the loudest thunderbolt, ever. I mean, no American politician on the level of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I think the chairman is a politician, right? No one on that level of American politics has ever spoken about the USS Liberty like that, especially not to an Israeli official at the highest level in ever since the damn thing happened and they began the lie that it was all a big accident and whatever. And Obama sent his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to tell the Israelis to their face, do not attack us to try to make it look like the Iranians did it or we're going to be pissed. I mean, that is, to me, very serious and must have sent shockwaves through the highest levels of power in Israel, where occasionally I think they snap back to reality and remember that their whole country is the size of a Texas county and we don't need them at all. And that maybe sometimes they need to back off.
So one final question, I think we need to start wrapping up here. Part of the deal involves lifting bans on selling weapons to Iran. So do you think any support of the deal has been from arms dealers who are hoping to profit from the lifting of this ban in the future?
Yeah, isn't that funny? That was something that came up in an interview with a reporter named Mark Perry, he's actually the guy that broke the story about Israel and America running the Jandala terrorists in Iran back in 2009, by the way. But he did a story where he talked about how, or I'm trying to remember now if it was in the story or just we talked about it on the show when he did the show. But it came up that, I think it is in his story that he did for Al Jazeera America, that there are some arms dealers who have now decided to go ahead and get behind the Obama policy because they figured, hey, we could sell weapons to America in the name of Iran. We could sell weapons to Iran in the name of America. They got fleets of, I don't know how many they've got left, but they got F-14s over there that need spare parts bad, buddy. We can go. There's an entire F-14 industry on mothballs here in America that can be put right back to work building up Iran's Air Force. So we were joking, Perry and I were joking that that's how to get the peace deal through is you got to get the arms dealers behind it. Get the military-industrial complex seeking peace on Earth so they can sell their weapons.
Okay, so you hear this claim that, they're going to sell weapons to, Iran is going to give weapons to Hamas and Hezbollah and all this money that was theirs that's being released through this deal. Is there any reason anyone should be afraid of any of that?
Well, I don't know. I guess if you live in northern Israel, you wouldn't want your government to start another war with Hezbollah right now or something like that. But I'm not an Israeli, and so I don't care. First of all, the 150 billion is actually more like 50 billion or, somewhere between 50 and 100 billion. Again, it's not American welfare money going over there. It's their money that America has seized and frozen and had other governments freeze, at our command. That is being released to them. There's no reason to assume that money or whatever extra money they make in their improved economy with the sanctions lifted is all going into some surplus fund that just goes to back Hezbollah. As it stands, I don't believe that the Iranians give Hezbollah, never mind Hamas, who they're barely even friends with at all anymore after the civil war in Syria, and Hamas took the jihadist side. But I don't think that they give Hezbollah, their best stuff as it is. Not that they've got, really great stuff, but they've got missiles, for example, that the Shahab 3 missile, they don't give that stuff to Hezbollah. They don't sell it to them either. I don't think that they have any reason to give that much military power to Hezbollah. Hezbollah's purpose basically is to keep Israel out of southern Lebanon. It's not to invade and conquer northern Israel. And the Iranians would be idiots to try to change that. We're talking some other dimension in some other century where Hamas is an offensive force and not just a local militia. Hezbollah, did I say Hamas? I meant Hezbollah. I'm sorry. I'm talking southern Lebanon here. And so as it stands, they don't arm Hezbollah as much as they possibly could or whatever. And at the same time, Hezbollah is not a wholly owned subsidiary necessarily of Iran. I mean, they are kind of part of the same revolution going on, but they also have a great bit of autonomy. I mean, they are way over there in southern Lebanon, so they're not exactly just a cat's paw of the Iranian government. They are their own, they're like a territory maybe, but, with their own kind of sovereign government too. And when has Hezbollah ever attacked America? Never. I mean, they attacked Really, it was the Amal militia, but if you wanted to pretend and just lump them all together for, Republicans' sake or whatever, they attacked the Marines at the barracks in 1983, but that was when Reagan himself said, that was my fault. I was stupid. What the hell was I doing? Putting the Marines right in the middle of a hornet's nest and getting them blown up. So he took more responsibility for himself than he put on Hezbollah. So if Reagan was man enough to admit that it was his fault, then for Americans to still pretend to hold a grudge about that from back in 1983, again, is just excuse making. And in fact, you type in Hezbollah into your Google News right now, and you'll see them killing Al-Qaeda. The guys who are the enemies of the people of the United States of America because our government has made them that way. And so you'd have to be Israeli to prefer Al-Qaeda to Hezbollah. But I don't think you could get a single American to sign on to that.
Okay, any more questions, Adam?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground tonight.
We did. We touched on almost everything connecting.
The bottom line
deal.
is the war party has no argument here. Ted Cruz had to say in his debate, he was slapping down John Kasich, and he said they get 24 days notice before all inspections. I mean, come on, man. What is this? This is stupid, okay? This is, I don't even know if he knows he's lying. It doesn't matter to him. It doesn't matter to him if he's lying or not. It doesn't matter to him if it's true or not. As Abraham Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people all of the time, and those are the ones that you want to concentrate on. And so that's the Republicans' policy is, look, you stupid idiots, be afraid because I told you to be afraid. And don't look into it because I told you, be too afraid to look into it. And that's it. That's all they got. I mean, can you imagine what kind of stupid world we'd have to be living in where that was actually the deal that John Kerry just signed over there, that they get 24 days, they get a month advance notice before any inspections of any of their nuclear facilities? Come on, man. You think of all the stupid things you would have to believe and all the true things that you would have to not know for that to even sound plausible for half a second, that could possibly be the deal. Of course, that's not the deal. And that's why he's lying, because he's got nothing real to refer to complain about.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, especially for a two-parter. And hopefully we will see Scott Horton again in the future.
Thank you both very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wake Up Call podcast.
If you would like to listen to more episodes, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or subscribe on Stitcher. And check out our website at wakeupcallpodcast.com.
There you will find show notes pages and comment sections dedicated to the show. You can also email us at contact@wakeupcallpodcast.com if you're interested in being interviewed for the show or have any other suggestions.
Thank you.